If you're a small business owner, you'll know just what it's like to be the chief everything officer. HR, payroll, employee benefits. Well, Gusto can do all of that for you. Gusto is online payroll and benefits software built for small businesses. It's all in one, remote friendly, and incredibly easy to use. It's quick and simple to switch to Gusto. Just transfer your existing data to get up and running fast. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonsoccer and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's gusto.com/lockedonsoccer.
The world's biggest soccer tournament has arrived, and you can trade the entire tournament on Kalshi. On Kalshi, you can trade every match from the opening stage all the way to the final. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code CUP26 to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI Kalshi. Trade the beautiful game. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How We're the podcast, and today we have something a little bit special because we have a fantastic guest joining us. But before we make the introductions, I'm very lucky to have someone to help me along the way because I also have a familiar voice from How We're the podcast and someone who loves our city as much as anyone I know, which can only mean Andrew Smithson. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. Thanks. That's lovely, mate. Thank you very much.
I love the passion you talk about the city, mate. You know, when we talk to councillors and you're getting into it, and we've done all the weekends. What was it? The Made in Sunderland weekend.
Yes.
You know, I just love the passion, mate.
Well, I mean, before hitting record, we've already had a little walk down memory lane. So yeah, I'm a sucker for any local history or local projects and developments. Yeah.
But we'll take any excuse to talk about Sunderland on and off the pitch, won't we, mate?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's time to introduce today's guest because for a start, he's one of our own, born in Washington. He started out as an architect, but now has plenty more strings to his bow, including broadcaster, where you've probably seen him on shows like Restoration Man, Old House, New Home, and of course, spoiler alert, George Clarke's Amazing Spaces. He's also an author and campaigner, but to top it all off, he is a huge Sunderland fan because today we're very pleased to welcome George Clarke. Hello, George.
Hello, gents. Thank you very much for having me. Very kind.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I mean, where we're speaking to you from today, I mean, are you at home? Are you off travelling? No?
I'm in West London at the minute. So, yeah. And actually, I'm just going to slightly correct you. I was born in Sunderland, raised in Washington. I wasn't born in Washington. I know Washington's officially part of Sunderland. But, yeah, I was born at the Sunderland General. I lived in Pallion. And then my mum and dad moved to Washington when I was very young. So definitely born in Sunderland, raised in Washington.
Right, there you go. And well, see, because I only had my only memories of Washington when I was young was going to the galleries, and that was it.
That's one of the greatest places on earth.
Rubbish story, but I remember San Marino scoring against England, and I was watching the TVs in the gallery. That's a really rubbish story, but anyway.
Do you know what's interesting about the galleries, though? And like, not many people would know this. It was one of the most innovative shopping centres in Europe when it was built. Because if you think it was miles before the Metro Centre, it was miles before the one in Sheffield. Can't remember the name; it's gone already.
Meadow.
Thank you very much. And it was one of the first proper American-inspired shopping centres in Europe. That's how innovative it was back in the day. People would find it hard to believe now, just because you've got so many indoor shopping centres all over the world. You just take it for granted. But it was an absolute game changer when it was first built in Washington. Well, Washington was a game changer, but we can talk a bit about that later if you want.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, when I think of Washington, I think of the film District 9 for some reason, just because of the
That's a little bit harsh, mate.
Not linking it with the movie, just the fact that it had all the districts. It's just it's a really bad link.
But do you know what? But even talking about from a kind of architectural regeneration point of view, it's really interesting for me because being raised in Washington, I had no idea that I was being brought up in this kind of modern utopia. I didn't know really, to be honest. I just took it for granted. It's where I was, it was still a bit of a building site. There was still construction works going on even when I was young. And estates were being built and roads were being laid. There was always a smell of creosote. So you could smell creosote everywhere because fences were all being painted by the buildings. But I didn't realize quite how innovative it was. It wasn't until I got to like 17, 18 when I, particularly when I went to architecture school at 18, and then I really started reading about the Washington Development Corporation, how it came about. It blew my mind, really. But it's interesting you talk about the districts, because I lived in District 3, which was Blackfell. But nobody in Washington ever used the district numbers.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
we never, ever, ever did. I can't remember anyone ever saying to me, "Oh, I live in District 6 or District 9." No one ever said that. And it was probably the only mistake, I think, that the highways people made. So, my estate was Blackfell, the one next door was Ox Close. We used Blackfell and Ox Close names. Lambton and Aden and Fatfield and, Balmston. We used the names of the estates. We never, ever, ever used the district numbers. And that was one of the only design flaws, because all the road signs were district numbers and not the names of the villages. And that's where it went. For me, that was one of the only design problems. I know other people say all the estates look the same and there were so many roundabouts and we didn't know where the hell we were. But that was all the outsiders whinging. If you got lost in our town, we didn't care. We never got lost. We knew where we were going. We knew about the identity of each village. There used to be like a lot of rivalry between the villages. So it was always, but even now, just defending Washington, I'll always defend Washington, to be honest, because I love the place. And on a serious point, I don't think I would have become the architect I am without it. Really understanding place, landscaping, pedestrianised streets, courtyard squares, village centres, community centres, local shops, local pubs. It was all there, And if you think about it, it was all built in a very, very short period of time. Even now, architects will go and visit Washington and go, "Oh yeah, but it seems a bit like this and that's not quite as good." And I'm like, come on, man. It was designed in the 1960s, built in the late 60s and early 70s. If you get under this, it's always the outsiders that judge more. When you lived there, it was amazing. We loved it. I genuinely, I loved it. I was, the house I'm in now in West London, which I bought 15 years ago, it's a 1968 modernist house. No coincidence, my mum's house is the 1968 modernist house. I live in a house which is like my mum's house. That's how much it's become part of me. I love living in a bit of modernism as much as I love old building. So anyway, that was me just jumping on the bandwagon to defend Washington and its district numbers. The district numbers were terrible, but everything else was great.
Well, just to go down a rabbit hole for a second, was like Washington almost the precursor for things like Milton Keynes and things like that? Is that the blueprint?
Well, the New Towns Act came in, where the government decided we need to build, these post-war new towns, and then development corporations were formed. And I think I don't think you should judge one new town against the next. I think all new towns had different socio-economic issues. Some might have been too far removed from other towns. I think the great thing about Washington for me, it was right between Sunderland and Newcastle. Right, it was in some ways, it was kind of perfectly positioned. 8 to 10 miles away from Sunderland, 8 to 10 miles away from Newcastle. When I grew up, it was maybe 50-50 between Newcastle fans and Sunderland fans. It was a kind of healthy rivalry. It was like, if you're in Sunderland, you're Sunderland. If you're in Newcastle, you're Newcastle. I found it quite good for Washington that there was a real mix. It was like a 50-50 split. It was very normal to walk to school and mates would have Sunderland hats on and your other mates would have Newcastle hats on. And it was generally where your dad came from or where your granddad came from, or your mum or your nana came from. And that's, some of them were like hardcore Geordies and some of them hardcore Mackhams. And all my family was Sunderland, so I was pretty hardcore Mackham. But I don't know, each new town's very, very, very different. I've been to other ones and they don't feel like Washington to me. Some of them don't feel like the kind of buzzing and thriving. They're, I think Washington's always had a bit of a buzz about it to me. It's so green. It's a fun, all the landscape and trees were planted when I was a kid. Very, very young. If you look at the images, if you just Google like aerial shots of Washington, in the 60s when the galleries was built and Blackfell was just being built and Lux Close were being built. It's kind of fields, really. Now, if you go to Google Maps and look at Washington, it's staggeringly green because all those trees that were planted back in the day are now 50, 60 years old. People underestimate that. It's for me. If you think about the government talking about new towns now, clean, green, eco villages and eco towns, they could do a version of Washington, but make the buildings themselves super sustainable. Because obviously we didn't have electric charging points for cars then. We didn't have EV cars. We didn't even have insulation in the walls. Do you know what I mean? We had single glazing. But the principles of pedestrianisation, we all walked everywhere. I'd walk from my mum's house to school and hardly cross a road. When I walked from my mum's house to the next estate to go to Oxclose Comp, I crossed one road on the edge of Blackfell to then get on the bridge over to Oxclose. You'd walk all the way through Oxclose. I wouldn't cross a single road until I crossed the bus road. And that wasn't even a main public road. It was just buses only. So if you think to walk to school for a few miles from door to door and just cross two very, very, very minor roads, it's pretty amazing, really. We all walked to the galleries. You walked down there, you bought your shopping and you walked back with it. But we were probably fitter and healthier back then than people are now because we walked a lot more and fewer people had cars.
Yeah. Well, it all fell down when you ended up going into the bus station in town because 5 minutes in there, I think, took 10 years off your life. But actually, Andrew, I was going to say,
it was slightly better than Park Lane bus station. You couldn't breathe in Park Lane.
Oh, I'd tell you what.
I'm surprised I survived it. When I should be coming out with all sorts of problems after being in Park Lane bus station when I was a kid.
Well, there was the one opposite the Croton Leisure Centre when I remember not being able to breathe. And
that was really bad, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You've just brought back a bit of PTSD there.
Yeah.
You'd be standing in that bus station and you were chewing on fumes, weren't you?
Absolutely.
God, it was awful.
And it was the old 4-star, wasn't it? There was everything was running.
How the hell did we survive the 70s?
I know.
Leaded fuel, leaded paint.
Yeah.
We had asbestos in my room. CFCs and your aerosol canisters. Didn't have to wear seatbelts. We should all be dead.
Every time I went swimming, I came back with a cough. But I was going to say, Andrew, in a parallel universe, Sunderland could have moved close to Washington, couldn't they?
Yeah. That was one of Bob Murray's big hopes for a while in the early 90s.
Bob Murray's hopes was what? To move the stadium to Washington.
Yeah.
No, I've known Bob forever, and he's never told me that. I didn't even know that.
That's going to be next to Nissan, isn't it?
Yeah, get him on that because that was a fascinating topic. It was quite far down the line, and it was production issues with Nissan was one of the stumbling blocks.
No way.
They were concerned that their just-in-time delivery processes would just go to bits on match days. But there was a plan there for a cinema, and you know how you said the galleries was very new.
Yeah.
This was going to be like kind of one of the modern entertainment venues you've seen in America for the World Cup now. It was something he was keen on for a while. When you're talking there about Washington, my mum worked at Rickleton for a long time, so I don't know the area as well as you, but I've got fond memories of the place, and it does surprise me when people are critical of the area. I think Washington's fascinating, and the difference.
Just don't get me wrong. I think that everywhere has its issues. You could pick a state in Sunderland, and we could have a chat about places that have declined and need a bit of help in regeneration. I think one of the problems that I've noticed in Washington that I was upset about is, I mean, we've talked about the landscaping being quite mature, but that's like the kind of trees around the main parts of the estate. But a lot of small scale landscaping, and I'm not a gardener, but your smaller shrubs and your smaller trees within the streets were all removed. And not all of them, but a lot of them were. And it made me really angry because, and I think, certain people blamed it on security. We're taking them out in case someone jumps out the bushes and mugs you. I don't know anyone that got mugged on my estate, to be honest with you. I'm convinced it was a maintenance and cost issue. You know what I mean? It's like, that's it. Because we used to have I remember when I was younger, there was gardeners all over the place, you know? There's people from the development corporation and maintenance people coming around and doing a bit of repairs to brick walls, doing a bit of gardening, something. And you just don't see it as much now. So I think one of the unfortunate things is, I think with budget cuts in councils, a lot of that stuff just got pulled out, which was a real shame. But and I'm not just being nostalgic about it, because I know it's quite often you can be contaminated by nostalgia, can't you? And have quite deluded memories about what it was like growing
You're
up.
on the right podcast for that, to be fair, George.
But I still, not just as an architect, but as someone passionate about good design, I still think there's really amazing elements about Washington that worked then and work now. You know, the pedestrianisation, the pedestrian squares were very safe to play in. I don't think you can blame designers for socio-economic problems that might happen in certain parts of towns and cities. That's beyond our remit, really.
Is it fair to say that the house types in Washington, there's a much bigger variance? Because I think because I work for the council, so I have reason to go to the different districts or individual villages. And to me, I feel as if you have townhouses, you have apartment blocks, you have flats, you have detached semi, you've got different styles from different eras. It feels to me as if Washington actually has a lot of ideas in terms of residential
And I think
provision.
what people don't realise, you know, is that there was so under the Development Corporation, there was an enormous amount of freedom to just get on with the job. But you know, if organisations now had too much freedom, they might manipulate it. Do you know what I mean? Where I think back then, so I'll give you an example. There's a really lovely guy, he's still alive. He's in his 80s, and he lives at Welwyn Garden City. That's an innovative place to live in. He was a planner in Washington, working for the Development Corporation in his early 20s, and I've spent time with him in Washington. And he just said to me, George, it was such an exciting time that there was lots of young people, young designers, highways, landscape people, even down to drainage and waterworks and how all that was going to come together, and the galleries and housing types. And also they had overseas designers. There was Danish architects and Scandinavian architects and designers that came over to the UK to work for different development corporations on new towns. And then there was like healthy rivalry between one estate and the next about who could out-design each other, right? And I think healthy competition like that, particularly with young people who are given a lot of, obviously there was some knowledge around and some experience around, but that blend of, you know, people of a certain age with the knowledge to deliver, but then young people of a younger age to innovate and disrupt and start pushing the boundaries of design. People don't realize that all came together in Washington. You know, if you really do your history on it and really look at the 60s and what they were doing and the drawings and the imagery, and I mean, in my studio there, I've got some original brochures from this guy. He was like, you can have them. Some of the original brochures that we did when it was still in design stage. And it's fantastic. All right, it's a bit utopian and it's a bit off the wall, but at least they were pushing the boundaries of innovation at that time as best as they possibly could. And you're right, there's some similarities. You can go to certain estates and there's some similar house types. But overall, you go to Soulgrave, it's completely different to Ayton. Ayton's different to Lambton. They're all different to Blackfell. And I love that. Absolutely. Yeah. And the irony is, certain outsiders come and go, oh, it all looks the same. And all the roundabouts not the same like else. And you've just proven the point that actually there's a huge amount of variation in the types. Even in my mum's square, where my mum still lives now in Blackfell, we were brought up in a 2-story, 4-bedroom house, front garden, back garden, very humane, our thoughts, very simple, excellent space planning inside. Walked in, little kitchen, hallway, toilet, little cupboard on the ground floor, open plan, living, dining at the back in your back garden. So everyone had a decent front garden, decent back garden, 4 really well-positioned, well-planned bedrooms upstairs, central staircase, really nice. That was on one side of the street. Other side of the street was the same. But at the lower end of the street, so around our courtyard square, which my mates called George's Square, which was great. I mean, I would have called it St. George's Square if I could have done, but maybe that'll come. Right? Well, how egotistical was that? Now,
we'll start the campaign.
Yeah, no, but so what was great about that is in each age group. So when I was, 12, 13, 14, my mates that were 12, 13, 14 would call it, let's go to George's Square. But then I would hear in George's Square, I would hear kids who were 8 or 9 going, oh, let's go and play in Tracy's Square. Because each group of mates would name it after the friend that lived in that square. And I loved that. There was a real identity to the place because it was a protected, pedestrianised courtyard square where there was no cars. And that was our playground. And every single front door of that of every single house opened onto that square. So it had a real buzz and a vibrancy about it. So on two sides of the square, 2-story, 4-bedroom houses. On this lower end of the square, there was the 2-story, 4-bedroom, but then there was 3-story, 6-bedroom for extended families and multi-generational living. That was amazing. You had grandparents living with their kids and their grandkids, all living in the same house, 3-story, 6 bedrooms. And then at the top of the square, a row of bungalows for people that might have disabilities or old age pensioners who might all want to live on the same floor.
Yeah.
All of that was linked to the same square. It was brilliant. And it still is.
Yeah. Well, all I want to know is what was in the water in Washington when Jordan Pickford grew up, because I could do a bit of that energy, to be honest.
1974 fluoride was entered into the water system. So we've all got good teeth in Washi.
There you go. Absolutely. Well, me and Andrew dug something up about the 1937 FA Cup final having a major impact on the UK's policy on dental hygiene when all the Sunderland travelled down to London and they realised how bad it was in the northeast. But anyway,
oh my God. And can we just come back to the stadium a little bit? I've got a mini story to tell you. So I worked when I was 16. I got a job for an architect in Washington Village. It was my apprenticeship. It was, I would say, the best 2 years of my life in terms of architectural education, because to go from doing your GCSEs on a Friday to going to a job, 40 quid a week, I was on working for David Johnson Architect. Bless him, he passed away a couple of years ago now. He was a superhero for me. And for me to work for his practice, he was the only architect. His wife was the secretary, that was Margaret. And there was 2 architectural technicians called Scott and Craig. And I worked for them. And David won the job to do the refurbishment of Rugg Park when we had to put the emergency exits in and everything after Hillsborough. So those means of escape from the main stands that had the lattice steelwork on.
Yeah.
I did the drawings for that with Scott, me and Scott McInnes. The police control box in the Roker end.
Yeah.
I worked on that. I did the drawings. Wow. I even did the toilets in the Forwell end. To do the toilet blocks in the Forwell end. That was one of the highlights of my career.
Did you do the scoreboard? Because it never worked.
I don't think we did the scoreboard, actually, thank God. No, we didn't do the scoreboard because I think that might have been it was meant to be a specialist company. But in terms of all the means of escape and all those stairwells and all the new staircases going from the main stand, I remember actually being on site. I was 16 and my boss was like having a meeting and some bloke, all the building works, I think the contract value was £1.3 million to put in everything, to do all that work. And I remember some bloke just going, are you from the architect? I was 16. And I went, yeah. And he went, what are we doing here? Is it going to be like a high ceiling or we put the slope and soffit in? And it was the staircase going down from the main stand on the upper level, which is probably where Bob would have sat, up to the chairman's seat. And I went, no, put a flat ceiling in and then have a vertical face and stick a Sunderland badge on there. And he just looked at that and went, do that. And I was like, in. It was on the highlights of my architectural career, having an impact on Roker Park. And then my boss, it's interesting you talk about, my boss then said, let's do a scheme. He was obviously fishing for work.
Yeah.
He said, let's do a scheme for the new stadium. And we worked for a whole weekend. I was only 17 at that point, 17, nearly 18. Yeah, 1992, I was 18 when I stopped working for David. We did a whole batch of drawings to put the stadium on one of the former shipyard sites on the north side of the river on the way to Castletown somewhere. So going along Western Way, where the bridge is.
I was just about to say, because there used to be a huge, whenever you came down that hill, there used to be a huge shipbuilding.
We did a scheme. I worked on a scheme There was just me, David Johnson, the boss, and Scott McInnes, the architectural technician, who was a really, really, really good friend of mine, Scott. The three of us worked on a scheme to put the new stadium on there. All hand drawings we did. We did all the scheme and the capacity and everything. I think it was just 50,000, I think. 55,000 we did the scheme for. We did all the calculations. God, I wonder if those drawings still exist. I might get in touch with David's family. And that was 1991, around that time. And David must have pitched that to Bob and said, should you do it? And obviously Bob was looking at multiple sites. I didn't even realize he was looking at Washington. And then the stadium ended up where it was. So yeah, think about that. To be working on Roker Park and working on a potential new stadium for your home club when you're 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
I should have retired then. It was never going to get me better.
That's it. You've reached the pinnacle.
On a Saturday, George, at the match when you were queuing for the toilets, could you not have said, I designed these. Let me get to the front of the queue here. I want to see the second half.
Do you know how many times I walked in and said, I worked on this. I worked on that. They must have thought, who's this little bullshitter? He's only 18. What's he talking about? He wouldn't have worked on this. But it was, when I think about it, I don't even know how David Johnson was a very good architect, but had the tiniest little office in Spout Lane in Washington, just near the Village Green, Washington Village Green. How he got that job? Toland with the contractors, John Wood, Toland with the builders. And I remember going to meetings at Roker Park with David Johnson. I was just made to sit in the corner and listen to meetings that he was having with Bob when I was a kid. Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Well, I mean, just to get on a little bit about that journey, George, because I'm not sure if it's a Sunderland thing or a generational thing, because from what I was reading, my brother had a conversation with a career officer. And when he told him he wanted to be an astrophysicist, the career officer laughed at him. But that's exactly what he became. And I read you had a similar conversation.
Did he become an astrophysicist?
He absolutely did.
Yes,
he's a professor now in astrophysics.
Yes, it's fantastic, that.
Well,
that is amazing.
He's down your way now. He's Vice Pro Chancellor of King's College now. He's down your way.
That's a better story than mine.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
I love that.
I'm not going to tell him that you said that.
No, I went to see a careers officer. I went down to the careers office was right next to Washington Library at the galleries. We were sent out to see the careers officer. What do you want to be? I want to be an architect. He had this one book that obviously had every career in there. Didn't take him long to find architect because it was under A. And he just said, you'll need maths A level. And I went, there's absolutely no freaking way I'm doing maths A level. I hated maths. And people might find that unusual because you think, well, an architect, you need to know maths. We're not structural engineers, right? It's not up to us to make the building stand up. Engineers do pretty high-end calculations, which are way beyond my skill to make sure the building is structurally safe. But what we need to do is areas and volume. Right, we need to do that. We need to work out areas of flooring or areas of brickwork. I used to do brickwork set and out drawings when I was a kid. When I was 16, my job, you'd have to do a brickwork set and out drawing. So the brickie knew exactly how many bricks, how many bonds, what the bond would be and stuff like that. But I could see that it was a visual thing. Like if you showed me a plan and said, measure that, I could do it. If you put a random equation in front of me rather than a shape or a volume, it was just numbers and gobbledygook for me. I didn't know what the hell it meant. So I was terrible at maths, definitely pure maths, forget about it. So I just said to him, I said, there's no way I'm doing it. I said, there's no way I'm doing maths A level. And his phrase was, you will never become an architect. and it said alternative career option in his stupid book that he had. And it said graphic designer and something else. And he went, why don't you become a graphic designer? I went, I don't want to be a graphic designer. I want to be an architect. If I met him now, I would shake his hand and say, thank you. Right? Because he pissed me off so much. I was so angry when I left. I was fuming. I went home. I got the yellow pages out. To those of a certain age, that was like an address book for local businesses.
I thought it was when you could. I thought it was when you couldn't read something.
I got the yellow pages out and I hand wrote, I think somewhere between 40 and 50 letters to all the main architectural practices in Sunderland, Washington, Newcastle. Colston Swinburne. I can come up with all the names. Angus Laybourne architects. I can come up with, honestly, I can remember them off the top of my head. Mario Minchella architect in Sunderland. Yeah, there was loads of architects. And for Faulkner Brown, who I ended up working for actually in 1995 in Newcastle, Ryder and Yates, called Riders. I hand wrote letters to all of them saying, I'm leaving school at 16, can I have a job? And David Johnston in Washington Village interviewed a few lads from my school, and for my CDT in my design course at my GCSEs, I'd actually taken some building types in Washington that weren't necessarily the best ones. So they were like concrete masonettes. And do you know what? I must have been slightly better than I even thought without being arrogant, because in Blackfell, they're the only buildings that have been demolished, because they're the ones that I didn't particularly like when I was growing up. They were demolished like 20 odd years ago, and new houses were built there. All the other ones have stood the test of time. But it was a house on top of a house, a maisonette with an open staircase, and then a street in the sky to get access to the upper floor house. And they were just made out of this kind of rubbery, aggregate looking precast concrete panels, and they weren't very nice. So for my own personal design scheme, I did a refurbishment of them and a retrofit and a makeover to make them look beautiful. And David Johnson saw those drawings and said, of all the boys that I've interviewed, you're the only ones. I think he did interview just lads, unfortunately, back in the day. He said, you're the only one that did any architecture, any buildings. And so I got the job. Wow. And so that careers officer, even though at the time I could have strangled, I would shake his hand now. I would have shake his hand, because otherwise I would have done my A levels and I don't think I'd be where I was. My apprenticeship was the best thing I ever did. When I got to university, and again, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but when I got to university, I remember tutors saying, like, I could hear them saying, George is way ahead. And that's no disrespect to my friends and colleagues at university, because I've been in practice. I've been there for 2 years. I'd used rotor and pens. I'd used scale rules. I knew how to do axonometric, isometric drawings. And a lot of other people that had come through the A-levels route, they were better skilled in other things than me, certainly better at maths. But when it came to architecture and design, I'd been given a little bit of a springboard by David, and God rest his soul. He was him giving me that apprenticeship. But for me, it was genuinely, it's an architectural pun, but was the foundation stone for the rest of my life. Without that, I just don't think it would have been as strong.
Do you think that careers advisor tells it differently and dines out on the story about, I remember young George, I was a guiding influence, I was a steady hand on his career.
The old reverse psychology. I got it.
Oh, the worst one. I'll really piss him off and make him massively angry to give him some drive to do what he really wants. Gosh, I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Well, just while I take a second to get over awful memories of pure maths in A levels, I think we need to take a quick break. So we'll be back very soon.
Imagine buying your kid a toy only to find the batteries aren't included, or buying furniture but missing the tools to build it. Frustrating, right? Now imagine the exact same feeling, but you're paying way more. That is what buying business software usually feels like. Fragmented, disconnected, and incredibly expensive. Odoo completely changes that. Odoo is a complete, fully integrated business suite where all your apps actually talk to each other. We're talking automated lead routing for your sales team, seamless AI integration, and intuitive point-and-click website builder. It's everything your business needs to scale, saving you time, headaches, and money. Stop piecing your software together. Go to odoo.com. That's ODOO.com to learn more.
And welcome back to How We're the Podcast, and we're just getting into it with George Clarke, and we're talking about your fantastic apprenticeship, George. And you then, as he said, you at university, you go on to become an academic. You're you're going to be an author. You're writing books, and then someone comes along and says, "Do you fancy being on the telly?" And you say, "No, it's all right. I'm not bothered."
I did as well. Yeah. It's probably me being a bit naive, to be honest. I just, all I wanted to be was an architect. That's all I wanted to be. That was my dream. And after being told that I'd never be one, yeah, to just have George Clarke, architect, RIBA. I wasn't doing it for anyone else. It was my passion. My granddad was a builder in Sunderland. I was brought up on building sites. I spent a lot of time around construction, but I love to draw. And I used to just draw and sketch buildings all the time from a very, very young age. And it was at about, I would say about 11 or 12, definitely 12. Might have been around 11. You know, my granddad would buy me books on architecture. I realized what an architect really was. Because for me, it was just like, not just, but it was like building and construction and joiners and carpenters and electricians and all that, which was great. And even though I could turn my hand to a few things, generally I would just draw. My dad was like an amateur cartoonist. He just did it for fun. So I've still got loads of drawings I did when I was young, like bits of tracing paper where my dad, and I'm talking like when I was 4, 5 years old, 6 years old, my dad would put tracing paper over Charlie Brown cartoons in the paper and I would trace over them and copy the handwriting and stuff. So I think that combination of drawing with my dad and my granddad being in construction, all of a sudden it just came together at 12 and I went, architects. Now I know what one is, what they do, I want to be one. So that's all I ever wanted. And then telly came along and that came about because I went to see an agent about a book. I went to see a literary agent about writing a book on architecture. And I swear to God, this is the timeline. I remember it really clearly. I went in to see her. She was called Rosemary. And I went to see her at like 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning. And I had my jacket on and my shirt on. And I had these book ideas in a little A4 folder. And I just spoke to her and I just said, look, I've got these ideas about a book. I've been asked to write a book. It wasn't something that came from me. I was asked to write a book for academic research by the university where I was teaching at the time. And she just said, she was very polite. She said, look, you seem like you've got a lot of passion, which is the one thing I've definitely got in abundance when it comes to buildings. Why don't you sign for someone work with you over the next few months to develop what the book idea might be? Because I'd never written a book before. And she called me on the following Monday, and she said, have you ever thought about doing television? I went, Rosemary, you're a literary agent. Why are you asking me about TV? She said, well, I look after writers that do some telly and do broadcasting. So Simon Sharma, the historian, don't know if you've heard of Simon Sharma. So yeah, she looked after people like him and she looked after some chefs. So predominantly they would be doing books, but they would do a bit of TV around that. She just said, I've been on the channel talking about people I already look after. And at the end of that chat, somebody said, is there anybody new? And she said, I've just signed this architect last Thursday called George Clarke. And they said, oh my God, we've been casting architects and designers for like 3 or 4 months for a new property format. Would he go and do the screen test? I mean, I said the less polite version of no. Genuinely, I did. I'm like, nah. Like, I've never been in front of a camera in my life. If there was a school play, I would run a mile. I wanted to be like the tree.
But George, is there anything more Mackem than someone saying, do you want to be on the telly? And then the Mackem will just go, nah, not really.
I said, fuck off.
Yeah,
that's actually what I said. But you might not want to put that on the podcast. I went, fuck off. And a slightly high-pitched voice as well. And it was like, what the hell are you talking about? And she, I said, no. I swear to God, you can ask her. She's called Rosemary Schooler. She's a wonderful woman. I said no on the Monday. She called me on the Tuesday and she said, have you thought more about it? And I said, Rosemary, I was really clear. I said no yesterday and nothing's changed today. So I don't even know why you're asking me the question. And then she said, well, I've booked you in for a screen test tomorrow, Wednesday morning, 10 o'clock. And I said, I'm not going. I went, I'm not going. It was a bit like pure maths. I just broke out in a sweat. I never did school plays. The ones I did school plays in, they were like musicals, so I didn't have to say anything. And I was forced to do it. You know, like when everyone in the class has got to be in the school play.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, all I want to do is play football. That's all I want to do is play football. I don't want to be in a freaking play. I'm not interested in it whatsoever. And so I did screen tests, and Rosemary said to me, she said, look, you've got nothing to lose. It was around the corner from my architectural practice. It was 5 minutes away. It was in Newman Street. I remember that for Talkback 10. And I just went in and did the screen test and got the job. And I still said no even after the screen test, but it was a bit less of a no, because when they seriously said, "We'd love you to present the program," I was like, well, all right, there's something in it. You know, if they'd said no to me, it would have proved my points. But when they said that they wanted me to do it, I was like, right, okay, this is actually pretty serious. If a big, serious TV production company have come in with the backing of the channel, it was the channel that you spoke to, not the production company. So the channel had gone, have a look at this lad. The production company had a look at this lad. And then this lad got offered the job and went, oh shit, maybe I need to say yes.
Yeah.
And it went from there.
I genuinely think there's some people in Sunderland who would find it a hassle if they won the lottery, to be quite honest. Going, oh, it's a hassle, that, isn't it? Winning all that and ringing them up and all that. But yeah, I mean, but it must be a sense of pride for you, George, that you are a face and a voice of an industry you're so passionate about.
People still say to me, all right, look, if people say, what's it like being a celebrity? I'll say, you're using the wrong C word when you're talking about me. Right? Like, no one's calling me a celebrity. I hate
Well,
it.
well, you
right?
seem calm. You seem calm to me.
I thought you were going to say charismatic, mate. I'm upset. Oh no, that's with a K. No, I'm joking. And I love being an architect, right? I really, really, really love it. I mean, I was genuinely, I went into a kitchen showroom this morning. I wasn't even meant to go in. I went for a scan on something. I went for a medical and for insurances, and then walked past the kitchen company who was supplying the kitchen for my project in Sunderland, by the way. And I walked past their showroom, and I just said to my girlfriend, I went, come on, let's go in. They're doing the kitchen. They couldn't get me out for an hour because I was like going through all these details and looking at that and looking at the handles, and you know, I love it. I love architecture so much. I love building stuff. I love being on building sites. I love the process of it. There's nothing more beautiful than designing and designing and design, because I'll sit and I'll sketch. I don't work on computers anymore. I'm too old. Even though I had ZX81s back in the day and my Spectrum Plus 3 and my Amstrad CPC 464 with a green monitor because I couldn't afford a color one. You know, even though I've been there and I've typed programs out from magazine to print, I can't even draw a line on CAD anymore because the software has just developed that much and I'm out of contact with it. It's just moved on that much. And in some ways I'm quite pleased because I didn't really enjoy working on computers when I was a young architect. I was brought up doing hand drawings, and then I went into computers in the 90s, and thank God I set my company up in 2000, so I didn't have to do computer drawings anymore. I took on staff to do them for me. So I still sit to this day with a big roll of tracing paper, detailed paper, the same pens, sketch, sketch, sketch. Is that any good? Can I do better? Rip off another bit of paper. Let's have another go. Let's have another go. And that process of sketching it, could it look like this? Could it look like that? I'll even do crazy things. Like I'll be like, right, if Mies van der Rohe was going to do this house, what would it look like? If Alvarado, the Finnish architect, was going to do it, what would it look like? If Norman Foster was going to do it, what would he do it like? If Richard Rogers was going to do it, if Kengo Kuma, the Japanese architect, what would Kengo Kuma do? Because you can literally design schemes, very different houses based on if you put your head in the head of different architects. That process, I mean, you can tell by the way I'm talking about it. I love it. It's me. It's my DNA. And then you get on site and seeing it being built. God, it's amazing. It's amazing. Like working, I love being around builders. And I know people will say that's a ridiculous thing to say. Who likes hanging around with builders? I love it. When I'm hanging around with trades. I was on site the other day watching some guys, when I say guys, building. I'm going to call it a shed, but I would be disrespectful. Over 1 million square foot of building, a warehouse for M&S. Now, that might not sound exciting. Oh my God. Like, I was just wetting my pants and hanging out with all the people on site, looking at the engineering and the detailing and how sustainable it is and how you design the most perfect level floor you could ever imagine, which is the size of like 50 football pitches perfectly level because it's got to be level for all the kit that has to move and the systems, the stacking and racking systems that I put in there. I just get a buzz from it. And then when it's built and you look at those early sketches and 3, 4, 5 years later, you're standing in that building and it's done. I think that's magical, you know. I genuinely think that's a magical process to go from me with a pen in my hand to a built piece of architecture that people come in and inhabit and enjoy. For me, there's nothing better. So this is a very long answer to a very short question. TV, I love it. It's opened up a whole world for me. It's taken me to places in the world I would never imagine spending time in. It gets me access to buildings that most other people might never see. It gets me sometimes into public buildings where I'm on my own. Like there's moments I've filmed in spaces where I'm like, you know, we're working in hours where the public aren't allowed in because we're filming it. And it's me, a sound man, a cameraman, and a director. That's it, the four of us in a staggering piece of architecture that I can spend 5 hours in. That is a privilege for an architect that you'd never believe. So architecture's, I can't say architecture is more important than TV, but it kind of is for me because someone's going to call me up someday and say, you're not doing telly anymore. They just will. They'll find someone more talented than me. And the phone call will come where they'll just go, nah, we're done, mate. And do you know what? That's fine. But it's a bit like a footballer being told it's your last game and you're going to retire. Seriously, it might sound ridiculous me comparing my architectural career to a footballer's career. But for me, it is. For me, it's all I wanted to do. It was my drive. It's my life. It's not my job. It's not just my passion. It's a way of life for me. And in some ways, I feel lucky that when a footballer's told to retire at 34, 35, you're still a young architect when you're 50. You know, architects keep going until they're 70, 80, 90, until they die. So to have that career become my life and be there for all of my life is an absolute privilege. To be able to then make television and the opportunities that TV gives me, and then for me to be lucky enough to be able to make programs that millions of people watch because we sell it all over the world and it's on YouTube and everything. It's not just about the viewing figures that week. I get messages from people who watched a program I've made 10, 12 years ago. That's pretty amazing, you know. I mean, that's like us watching a football game from like 1986 in Mexico and watching Gary Lineker score. You know what I mean? It's like we look back to that and you go, oh my God, for me to be lucky enough for people to watch my programs that I maybe made in 2006, 2002, Amazing Spaces started in 2012 and I'm still making it. That's a privilege. That's a real honor, that.
Yeah, well, me and Andrew will still dream that we can make it and be a professional footballer. We'll hold on to that dream, won't we, Andrew? But
you should never lose that. You should never lose that. Even when I was in my 20s and I'd watch Sunderland play, I still wanted to score a goal.
Oh.
I think as much as I'm comparing architecture with football, I don't think any career could give you the buzz if you played for your home city and you scored a goal in what for me would have been the forward end because I was a forward end boy. No amount of architecture is going to be as good as that. So, but I was a half decent player, but I was never going to be a pro player. I was never that good. I was good at school level, but I wasn't even good at kind of a regional level. It was never going to happen for me. So I think as much as we can dream, I'm very happy I went into architecture with a bit of football on the side.
Yeah. Well, just before we get into your projects in Sunderland, because you've got a few on the go and you're involved in some, especially in the city centre. But as you said, your businesses, TV work, taking you all over the world. How well do you think we do in the UK looking after our old buildings? Because there's a reason I ask this, actually, because every time I visit Sunderland and I'm out with my mum and we're in town, every single time, without fail, she makes me look up and look at all the old architecture in Sunderland.
Good.
In the city centre. And she never fails to mention the state of the train station and the fact that they knocked the old town hall down and all of that. But how well do you think?
In my studio just over there, I've got a framed picture of the front elevation of the town hall. And it breaks my heart that we demolished that building.
Oh, I'm
It wasn't
upset
just,
every time.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't just Sunderland. I think you've got to remember nationally across the country, there was this wave in the 50s and 60s of the post-war era of the old is crap, let's build new. And let's build these utopian visions, which you could argue, like Washington was a utopian vision in the 60s. But for me, that was a more humane architecture, 2-story houses, front and back gardens, pedestrianisation, landscape, all the stuff that we've talked about. But, even in London, Euston Station, Google the old Euston Station before it was demolished to make way for the new one in the 60s. It was beautiful. It was fantastic. And there's the old Euston Arch that marked the gateway to the station. They demolished that, which is this beautiful, I think it's Doric style, classical archway that you would go through as part of the station. They chucked the whole thing in the canal, in the London Canal. And in fact, the stonework's being taken out. It's sitting in a yard in East London. It looked like a temple, like a Doric temple. And that was part of Euston Station. You can see them with massive pneumatic drills breaking it all up and smashing the building up. Now, we look at that now and say, that was disgraceful. That's terrible. How could you do it? Back then, it was happening everywhere. The old station was fantastic in Sunderland. The town hall, my God, I wish we'd kept it. The images of the internal staircase and the old photographs. What a beautiful building it was. But it wasn't just Sunderland, it was everywhere. I mean, it kind of pains me to say it a bit because I'm a Sunderland lad, but Newcastle luckily managed to keep a lot of its old buildings and lost some crackers, mind. I mean, if you look where Swan House roundabout is and around there, that's a terrible entrance to the city. I've always said when you go over the Tyne Bridge, what an awful way to enter the city. And if you look at the historic maps and the old buildings were there was some beautiful old buildings in that part of the city. So that, and we know why, because there was some dodgy stuff happening back then, some dodgy deals being done. T. Adam Smith and all of that lot. They were lucky that didn't spread. Bloody Grey Street could have gone. Who knows? It could have gone. It might have gone. And you think, no way, it couldn't have gone. It might have gone, because that was the view in the 60s. Get rid of all that old crap and let's build the new minimalist, modernist world. And it's a real shame in Sunderland because we lost too much. I'm very lucky. I mean, I've got the building in Sunderland. I've got a couple of things going on, but I'm lucky enough. I feel really honoured to have had the chance to buy one of the oldest buildings in the city. Yes, late 1700s.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into the story about it too much because I'm making 2 one-hour TV programs about it, which will be on Channel 4 next year. But my God, we've done the history research on that building, and it's freaking amazing. It's better than I even imagined.
Well, I'll come on to it in a second, but not in detail. But Andrew, it is something, isn't it? When if you walk around Sunderland city centre, if you look up sometimes, because there's parts of the city centre that you think does look 60s, does look 70s, but there's certain parts, if you look up, the architecture's unbelievable, isn't it?
Oh, beautiful. And I don't know if you've seen it, George, but there's been a huge restoration of the Elephant Tea Rooms, and that looks stunning now. Over the road, what was Mackey's Corner, that's been brought back up to
It's fantastic.
Standard. It looks lovely.
We just need all that to carry on down High Street West, mate. Just needs to keep going.
Yeah, well,
the better.
Yeah. But there are some signs of these fantastic buildings in the history. We're talking there about we've lost a lot of our gems. This might make me very unpopular. I really like the Yard, which is the project to redevelop what was Guildbridge Police Station. Now, a lot of people think that's a horrible brutalist style building. I don't know if it's just me being weird. I actually quite like that. Now,
I don't think it's a bad building, actually. I don't think it's a bad building, and I think that, I made Restoration Man for many, many, many years. I was known as the Restoration Man on Channel 4, and we did everything. We did like 1960s military bunker. I think it was a late 1950s air control tower up in Scotland. We did a lot of, you've got to remember the 50s and 60s was quite a long time ago, and then our period buildings. So I think, look, There's good traditional buildings and bad traditional buildings. There's good modernist buildings and there's terrible modernist buildings. I think the yard and the old police station, I quite like it. And I think it's been really nicely done, quite elegantly done. I think where it sits is quite nice as well. It's got that kind of modular look to it and it looks quite funky. I don't have a problem with that. There's some brutalist architecture that I really, really, I mean, I live in a 1960s house. You know what I mean? I'm not in a period, everyone thinks I live in some like Georgian period house in London. I don't. So I think there's good architecture and bad architecture, and there's good architecture through all the ages. I think some are worth keeping, some aren't. But I think if a building's well designed in the first place, it could be well restored in its later years.
Yeah. Well, we'll come on to that grade 2 listed building. And again, you're not going to give too much away because you said you've got those programs coming out, which I'm now going to be all over because anything to do with the history of Sunderland, because some of those.
By the way, I wasn't going to be making any programs about it. I mean, I'm not going to tell you the long story, but the way it all came about, I was just going to buy a flat in Sunderland to be closer to my mum and spend some more time in the city. And then I invested in Vaux in the brewery with the good lads that have brought Vaux back. And then I was slightly, let's just say I was having a few too many with them in Sunderland. And they said, there's a building that's up for sale on High Street West. And before you knew it, I'd bought a 6,000 square foot building from the late 1700s. And it wasn't a tiny lock up and go 2-bedroom apartment I thought I was going to be buying. And then it was like, should we make a TV show about it? And I said, no. About that, I went, no, it's my own private little project. It's my own little thing. But then I realized, if I'm honest, I think making a couple of programs, it'll be good for the city.
Yeah. It'd be fantastic to see some of that history. But just if you can just tell us how that's progressing. And also there's the Nile and Villiers development on High Street West as well. It just seems like that area's just taken off.
Sunnyside's flying. Genuinely, it is. It's flying. We've opened the Bridge Vaults pub on the other side of where my building is. You've got Pop Rex next door and Sunny's. You've got the development of Villiers Street on that corner, which is fantastic, by the way. You've got the housing that's all being built. It's great to get new housing back into the city. It's amazing how Sunderland's got one of the lowest residential populations in the inner city. It's lots of people live on the outskirts of the city centre. Whether you're in Roker or Falwell or Ashbrook or wherever it might be, but in the city centre, we've got a lot of work to do in the city centre. And yes, there's some nightlife there, and it's been triggered by what's happened in Keele Square and all the development of Sheepfolds, which is amazing, and associated development with the club. I think that's all really, really good, but we've got a long way to go, I think, to get some more nightlife into the city. But it's happening. No, for me, there's more cranes in the sky than there's ever been in Sunderland. There's more investment happening in Sunderland than there's ever happened in my lifetime. And yours, I mean, if you think about the 80s, let's be honest, it was like the demise of Sunderland, wasn't it? Shipyards closing, coal mines closing, not enough investment. We know who to blame for that, but I'm not going to get too political. And it was pretty bad. It was really bad. And in fairness to Labour and all the new team that have come in and the hard work that the council have done, I think hats off to them. I think a lot of councils get a lot of bad press. It's taken a massive amount of work by the council and the leaders and the people there. All the stuff that's happening now hasn't happened in the last 2 years. It's been 5, 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years of planning and getting funding in, and get that investment in is not easy in a place that's struggled since the 80s and through the 90s. So it's been 20 years of blood, sweat and tears that have been put in by some really bloody good people in Sunderland at the council and the local community and residents, where it's given the place a bit of hope to say, do you know what, we can do this. And I think there's a real buzz about the place now. I think there really is. I mean, look, I've bought a place back there. I'm creating my own home back in the city. If I'm really honest, if you asked me that in 95, I would have said, I love my city. I'm passionate about it. I've moved away. My life's a bit different. Will I move back? I doubt it. I can't wait for that building to be finished. I can't wait to move back there. I can't wait to wake up in my place in Sunnyside and then wander across to Keele Square, go over the footbridge and go to Sunderland. I think the city should be really proud.
Mm.
And I think the people of Sunderland should, and I'm not just saying that, I'm not being some some coach about being positive. No, I'm buzzing about it. Do you know what's really fascinating is when I bring friends up from London, or like a few of the people who work for me in my office in London go up to work on the Sunderland project and go and have meetings. They don't want to leave. Honestly, they do. I swear to God. The lad's working
Yeah.
if you could do an interview with him at some point because he's more interested than me. He's actually doing all the hard work on the building in Sunderland. He loves it. He loves going up there. He loves having meetings. He even said the sun's always shining when I go to Sunderland, which I must have just picked the right days for him to jump on the train. But I think we should be proud of that. I think we know people from Sunderland are great. We know that because we're from there, so we're biased. But we know we're passionate. We know how kind they are. They'll do anything for you. They really will. People really look after you up there and they'll have you back. And I think that's it comes from a deep-rooted community going back hundreds of years who have always been there to support each other, no matter how tough it's got. And Sunderland's had its amazing boom years and it's had its really, really tough years. And, it's a relatively short period of time. If you think when we were there in the 80s, when things started to go to shit, let's be honest, and the 90s were bloody difficult. You've mentioned the odd pub before you pressed record that we're having tough times in the 90s, that we're having better times in the 70s and the 80s. But I feel it's really coming back. And people like me want to move back. And people want to stay and contribute. I think there's people who are going to the university there who are going, do you know what? There's an opportunity here. I think the fact that, I mean this in a good positive light, that things are relatively affordable. It might not seem affordable to lots of people, but you can buy a decent building for a decent price in Sunderland. And the nice thing about that, I've worked in regeneration places all over the world, particularly in the UK. I was working on regeneration towns. I won't mention them, but some pretty tough towns in the 90s that were on their knees. And I worked for an architect that did master planning and regeneration work. I used to go to those places in the 90s thinking, I've got to try and help turn this place around to architecture and design. But because they were relatively affordable, and then all the creatives came in, all the young entrepreneurs, all the people that wouldn't be able to afford something in the next city or the next town would go, you know what, I'm going to do it there. I'm going to buy there. I'm going to set up a business there and I'm going to make it work. So I think that I'm going to be honest, I think the affordable side, and so I know some people say it's not affordable because it depends on the position that you're in.
Yeah.
But, if I was going to buy the building I bought in Sunderland, where I am in London, it'd be 5 million quid. You wouldn't get any change out of 5 million quid. Now, I paid a lot less than 5 million for that building, and I think that allows people. I always think that creative people will come to a city and young creatives will stay in a city when they get economic opportunity. And I think with all the investment that's going in and all the opportunities that are there in the city, I'm bloody excited about the next 10 years. And that's before we even talk about the football club. I just think from a regeneration point of view, there's just some great storytelling in the city. There's some brilliant people there who are going, come and see what we're doing. And the more I find out about it, and I'm from there, the more time I'm spending there, the more I'm getting a buzz about what's going on. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And my mate came up from London and he bought around in the Millview Social Club and didn't want to go home. That was him. He couldn't believe he didn't need more than 20 quid just for a few pints. But just because we're pushed for time, we've taken up far too much of your time already. But we need to talk on about your true love. We need to finish this, which is, of course, Sunderland AFC. Like all of us, bitten by the bug. I mean, was it just a case you walked into Roker Park as a young'un and that was it? You were just hooked?
All my family were Sunderland fans through and through, every single one of them, and hardcore Sunderland fans. Everyone, all my grandparents, my aunties, my great aunties, my uncles, they were all massive, die-hard Sunderland fans, like right up there. So, and I love football. I'd loved it from a very, very young age, and I played for all my school teams. I just loved it, and it was proper. it was proper kind of council estate stuff where we put our jumpers down as goalposts and we play after school every day. At the garage blocks in Blackfell, someone with a standing goal, that was the garage that was marked. And there'd just be three of us, someone doing crosses, other one doing a header, someone being in goal. It was every day, 365 days. And it was 365 days a year. We didn't go on holiday anywhere. We stayed at home most of the time. It was football, football, football. And I just loved it. It was, I suppose it was around like 85. All right, we got beat in the Milk Cup final. I was like 11. I wanted to go to the games when I was younger than that, but my nana wouldn't let my uncle take me there because it was rough in the early 80s. And the image of football wasn't great, and my nana was having none of it. And then 1985 was my first game, and that was it. And that really was it. I mean, it was an obsession like you'd never believe. Painted my bedroom red. I'd go to can you remember the club shop at Jackie White's Market? The Sunderland shop in the middle.
We were talking about this the other day because
I mean,
just opened one up in town.
But I took a picture of what was the old one, and everyone can't believe that was the little club shop in town. It was like
Brilliant.
1.3 meters wide and 3 meters deep. Yep. And I'd go in there and buy photographs of Gary Bennett and Eric Gates and everyone else and pin them up on my wall when I got back home. And I just, me and my uncle I was in nearly every home game, not all of them because I couldn't make them all. We bought programs. We used to buy it from a guy. When we walked down from my nana's house up from Sea Road, we passed the guy that sold programs for years. I never knew his name, but we called him £2 for £1 because every time we walked up, he would just go £2 for £1. So me and my uncle would go, yeah, we give him a quid and get our 2 programs for 50p each. My mum has carrier bag after carrier bag of programs all wrapped up in the loft. Going back all those years, she's still got them. I've got the program just in my garden studio there at the Milk Cup final. I didn't go. I wasn't there. I watched it on telly when I was, and that was my first Sunderland top when I had Milk Cup final 1985 on. Mm-hmm. And I just love it. And I mean, just going to that last game of the season at Chelsea, I've been to some pretty spectacular games. I remember when we beat Chelsea at home. I think it might have been the quarter-finals of the FA Cup back in the days when Gordon Armstrong scored, and I thought we'd won the World Cup, even though it wasn't, still just club football. And there's been some fantastic moments at the Old Roker Park. I don't think anything will beat that Chelsea game for me. And the reason why I'm saying that is I didn't think we'd survive this year in the Premiership. I'm going to be really honest. I didn't think we'd do it, right? I wanted to believe with all my heart that we would. And I never said to this is the first time I've ever acknowledged that I never believed we'd stay up. I've never talked about it because you don't want to say that to any of your mates. But in my head, I'm like, we haven't got a chance. We're going to get demolished. Especially the way we came up. It wasn't like we were the top team from the Championship and we were 15 points clear. Do you know what I mean? We were there and thereabouts. And I thought we were going to get demolished. To survive, unbelievable. To finish above Newcastle was the next one for me. Unbelievable.
Tick.
To qualify for Europe, even on the day of the game against Chelsea, I'm like, why are we even talking about this? In my head, I wouldn't say that because you don't admit it to anyone. But people are saying, I was thinking, shut up. Why are you saying that? Just be thankful we survived. I'd be happy if we just finish above the Mags. To do that, unbelievable. But you know what's more important than that for me? More important than all of that, and you might not quite believe this, the quality of the football that we're playing. I've never seen Sunderland play like that before. So yeah, all those things are staggering. And, I'd marry Granit Xhaka tomorrow. I would happily get married again if it was him, because I love him. He's a god. The players that we've got, I think collectively are staggering. And with his leadership, it's been brilliant and a brilliant manager. And I think we've got a great club owner as well. I think it comes from the top. You just have to look at other clubs that don't have great owners that might be struggling. Spurs, right? And like, it's amazing that we've got all of that in place. But for me, and obviously having all of that in place means you've got a chance on the pitch. To be watching the quality of football that we play, I've never seen anything like it. We turned Chelsea over that day.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just like, oh, the last game of the season and the home crowd were great. I mean, the home crowd were unbelievable. I took an Albanian mate of mine. He's a massive Shaka fan. And he's been my mate for 25 years and he runs my local pub. It's called Bardi. He's never been to Sunderland in 25 years. And all the time he's saying to me, when are you going to take me? When are you going to take me? And I've always felt guilty. I've never had the chance to do it. And I said to him, I'm taking you to the last game of the season. You're coming. Got him on the train. Bless him. He had to get on a coach at York, from York to Darlington, because there was engineering works. That really pissed him off. He's a big football fan. He's a big Albanian football fan and loves his football. And he said to me at the end of that game, I've never seen a crowd like that, ever.
Wow.
He's in his 50s like me, and he's been at stadium after stadium after stadium. He's been to the Emirates. He's been to Wembley. He said, I've never known an atmosphere like it at that match. And obviously, I know it was a big celebration of the year. It was a celebration for the team. It was a celebration we'd survived. It was a celebration we finished above Newcastle. And obviously, it was a massive celebration that we qualified for Europe. For me, it was a celebration of the team playing the best football I've ever seen. And I think the City being in the best position I've ever known it being in since I was born.
Yeah.
It's symbolic of the City, I think. That's what's beautiful about it.
Well, actually, just for a start, I was thinking of your mate there, and I imagine Loriksana might have been high up on it. I think he was the first Albanian to play, or the only Albanian to play for Sunderland, Andrew. I'm not sure if any others.
Yeah, I don't think there's a long list of Albanians.
But you talked about
to be honest, I've got the perfect match because my girlfriend's Swiss and my best mate that runs the pub down the corner is Albanian. I mean, they could have given birth to Xhaka if they were the right age. I'm sure you know what I mean. I'm joking.
But you talk about a celebration, George. But it's incredible in a place like Sunderland, because I actually live in Sheffield, and I've seen the impact on how those two clubs have dropped on the city itself. It almost has an impact on the city and what happens in the city, how much investments in the city, how much
it's massive. It's massive. I mean, I'm involved in the Foundation of Light, which is the charity that sits alongside the football club at the Beacon of Light. Building that, I'm very proud to have been involved in as a trustee. And the architectural practice I used to work for in Newcastle in 1996 designed that building, and they've done Culture House. And it's amazing that the practice I worked for, I was then like client, if you like, with the foundation. But it makes a difference to the foundation's money and revenue that comes in. It makes a difference in the pubs. It makes a difference in the restaurants. It genuinely makes a difference everywhere. When we dropped down to League One, come on, it was bloody tough. Yeah. I watched us when we were in the old third division when Marco played, and obviously we went straight back up that year, which was amazing, and we went up as champions. I mean, it was a great year because Marco was banging goals in left, right, and centre. Yeah. But we went straight back up. To be down in League One for the number of years that we were, I was petrified. I was like, if this sets like rock hard concrete and we can't get out, we're fucked. That's terrible for the city.
Yeah.
And you just have to look at the fans. We eat, sleep, and breathe that club. We love it. So if the club's in a really bad place, for me, all right, it might be a bit hard saying the city's in a bad place, but I think it affects the mood of the city. It affects the morale of the city. And I just think it's bloody beautiful at the minute that 20 years of investment by the people and the council and the good people who've made that regeneration happen. The people that have stuck with the city, and some people like me who are coming back to help the city, never thought we would, but are. And the club having what it's got. And even through Bob building the stadium in the 90s. I mean, you think it could have been a disaster. We build that stadium and we're in League One and then we get relegated to League Two. It could have been not the death of the club, but it could have been tragic for the club. And you just look at what's happened. It's beyond a dream for me. And for that to be happening at the same time that the city's got this buzz and the regeneration's kicking in and the investment's coming in. And I'll tell you what, we're a freaking global brand now. That's what we should be proud about. Look at the Mexicans last year. They picked Sunderland as their club. I was getting
Elvis next year as well.
Come on. I mean, the king doesn't get any better. Doesn't get any better than that. And you know, we are a bloody global brand. And I know Sunderland Till I Die triggered a lot of that, and that wasn't necessarily great. It was painful for us to watch it. You know, everybody abroad would go, "Oh my God, I'm watching your team." And I'm like, what? Being relegated from the Premiership and then the Championship to League One. And I'm feeling suicidal. What are you talking about? But that helped in some ways, and it's raised the brand, and some good people at the club. David Bruce, who was there, he's got a Sheffield Wednesday now, but he did a huge amount. Carroll's been great for the club. Christian Speakman, who was doing recruitment, I know Christian's moved on now. There's people who aren't at the club now, I think, who we need to thank and who have done a lot. But it just shows that we've had this amazing standard to get from League One to Championship, Premiership, and then Carroll's kicking in again and bringing in some other people to push us on in the Premiership. I mean, for me to have bought the building and to be coming back at this time, there was delays on us basically sorting the building. We don't start on site until next month for loads of reasons, listed building consents and all sorts of stuff, and the new fire safety regulation that's come in. So everyone's like, when are you starting? When you start? I'm like, it's not as easy to start a building project as you think. It's not like it was in the 1970s. And I said to my girlfriend, I went, God, if we get relegated and I finish the building and we don't get a year of me being there in the Premiership back home, I'm going to be devastated. So I'm over the moon with staying up. For just that selfish reason, I want to walk up out my house, up High Street West, get a Keele Square, maybe have a pint, cross over the bridge, maybe have another pint or two, and then go to the stadium. That's my life complete.
Well, not just that, but maybe when you open, you'll have Juventus fans coming or AC Milan fans coming or whoever.
It'd be great, isn't it? I mean, it's great. I mean, we've never, for me, I don't think we've ever been in a better position. And I know we had great times when Super Kev was playing with Niall Quinn, and we had some, we were good in the Premiership when we finished in decent position for a couple of seasons. But and I know things can change massively in football, but I just feel like there's a difference at the club at the minute. I think it's on every level. I think we're in a really, really good, strong position. And if Jacques stays for a couple of years and crafts a few places around us and we get the right recruitment in, I think it would be fantastic to get. I actually think we should go out and buy take a risk on a couple of young top midfielders and get them alongside Jacques. I mean, we've got some good ones anyway, but I think maybe even looking even younger, just to sit alongside him and learn from his leadership. And not that I should be telling Kieran his job because he knows what he's doing and I don't, but I'd give Jacques a job. I'd put him in there. I'm not talking about manager because I think we've got a fantastic manager, and I think good players don't necessarily become great managers, and some managers can go in too soon. But giving him a very, very senior leadership role at the club would be outstanding, really, because he's just got it. It's like having another manager on the pitch. Lebris would say that he's phenomenal. But I don't think we can depend just on him, even next year or the year after.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an exciting summer and hopefully an exciting couple of years when, who knows, we might see, Prime's next documentary on Sunderland, All or Nothing when we're in the Champions League or something like that. Who knows? But George, we've taken far too much of your time than we intended. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much. But first, I was going to say, are we likely to see this documentary that involves Sunderland anytime soon? Have you got any plans to get up soon?
I can tell you a bit about it. We're making 2 1-hour programs, primetime programs. It'll be on Channel 4 primetime, and then it'll be on their streaming service afterwards. It is following the restoration and development of the building that I've bought. It's going to be following my home being built, but also I'm opening a bookshop on the ground floor. And I want that to be like a little mini living room for Sunnyside. And also working with all the partners that we've got around it, whether it's Pop Rex and Sunnies. And so, I'll be filming that literally between now and March, April next year. So you're not going to see it until some point mid 2027. So it's some way off, but some things are worth waiting for. It's a relatively small project when you think about it. It's 6,000 square foot. It's my apartment. It's some guest suites. We're going to have some accommodation for writers to come and stay in the city. I'm hoping that it's going to be a relatively small building that packs a big punch.
Mm.
So the bookshop obviously will be put on the map a little bit because of the program being made. But beyond that, and I've got a fantastic bookshop manager. But beyond all of that, I'm going to be inviting loads of writers to come to the building and do readings. And there's going to be nights where you can see some, I think, pretty reputable people coming to the city of Sunderland. So instead of, going off to the bigger brands to do their book signings, potentially in other regions of the Northeast, I'm going to get some pretty amazing people to come to my humble bookshop in Sunderland to do signings, book launches, to do readings as well. But I love the idea that we get writers from all over the country and all over the world. Yeah, we might get someone who's, I don't know, a writer from Italy who comes to write about football in the city. I will give them free accommodation. They can be a writer in residence for a weekend or a week or a few weeks, as long as they're writing about Sunderland. And then we'll publish that content through our bookshop online. We'll publish it for free for people to see, because I want people, not just from the city, but across the country and across the world, to come to my humble, tiny little bookshop to do some storytelling about what they think about our city and the people that live there. So from that point of view, I'm really excited. I've always wanted a bookshop all my life. All my life. I bought a book on architecture from the second-hand bookshop in Sunderland, and it transformed my life when I was a kid. And I've always dreamt about having a bookshop because I think they're beautiful spaces. So if my humble little bookshop and the little guest residence can just create a little bit of a literary buzz, who knows? Maybe we'll have a Sunderland Literary Festival or something like that in a few years' time. See what we can do. But for me, it's about storytelling. My programs are about storytelling. And I think if we can get writers to come to the city and be writers in residence and create their stories about the city that we love, I think it could be really exciting.
Yeah, and just your story as well to come full circle. That's a fantastic story as well to come back to Sunderland, and from that point of view of that first book, and to have that bookshop in Sunderland, it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, given that there was the first Homecoming Awards in November, December last year. And it was an award given to people. Do you know what? I'll show you how proud I am of it before I go. That's how close it is to me. There's my. So
Wow.
there was a number of people were given. Don't know if you can see that bit of reflection. We're given Homecoming Awards for people who have maybe left the Northeast and then decided to come back and make a difference. And so, that's my Homecoming Ambassador Medal that was given next year. And I'll tell you what, I'm more proud of that than nearly anything else. So it's nice to be coming home. It's one of those things like, I moved away in 1996. I did my first degree at Newcastle University, and then I came to London and worked for a practice in London for a year, and then did my second degree at University College London. And I ended up staying in the late 90s. It was buzzing in London. I mean, it was proper. It was, you took an Oasis and Bricktop and, and I was living in West London and I had this amazing vibe and buzz about it, and then started my office here in 2000. So I get all the reasons why I left and I get all the reasons why I stayed here. But my word, I get all the reasons why I'm coming back.
Yeah,
Never thought it would happen, and I'm loving it.
It's
I'm loving it.
Absolutely brilliant, George. And just very last one, are we likely to see you at any games next season? Have you got plans to get to see the lads?
Loads of games. Yeah, I didn't do as many as I wanted last year just because I was away a lot and traveling a lot. I'll probably do about 5 or 6 home games, and then I'll do 4 or 5 away. Like I'll watch us play Arsenal and stuff, because when I'm in London, sometimes it's easy for me to go to those games now that there's Premiership teams to see in London. But no, whenever I can, I'll get it. And particularly now that I'm going to have a place there, I'm going to be back a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, and we'll see who we draw away from home as well in Europe, because there'll be some good trips where Sunderland will be invading mainland.
I will be absolutely pissed off if my diary stops me going to our first European game. I'm going to be spitting feathers. I'm going to be really angry. I'm going to sound like a typical Sunderland fan. I just hope Europe doesn't detract us from Premiership games. That's my 1% nervousness. I'm 99% happy and 1% nervous, because even this year I've said, I don't care about the cup games. I don't care about the FA Cup. I don't care about all that. I don't care if we get knocked out from every single competition in the first round, because the priority this year was staying in the Premiership and Premiership survival and consolidating that. And we've done it. So we've just got to be careful. We don't get too stretched.
Yeah, I think it'll only impact it in terms of the fans being hungover for a week afterwards and maybe not taking in the next Premier League game afterwards that follows.
I'll be one of them.
Yeah, well, as I say, Sunderland, it's going to be like, that 1973 documentary Back in Sunderland where there's nobody there. It's gonna be like that, isn't it? It's just not a soul in town. Anyway, George, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure, and we can't thank you enough for your time. So thank you.
You covered a lot of bases there, crikey. That was a lot of. How are you going to cut that together? I've got no idea. But it was. Do you know what? It's and I really mean it. It was a real joy and a real pleasure, because I really, really love my city, and there's a little bit of me sometimes feel guilty about leaving, but I don't know. Maybe sometimes you've got to leave to really, really, really fully appreciate what you've got. But I've got full respect to the people that stuck it out through all the tough times. I probably flew the nest when I shouldn't have done, but it's lovely to be going back.
Yeah, it was nice to remind you of the Crowtree bus station as well. That was a particular highlight.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been diagnosed with asthma, so maybe that was to blame.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again, George. And Andrew, thanks again, mate. Thanks again for your time.
Cheers. I've been put to shame there. Chris George has got even more passion than me. Just, I loved the passion and the ideas and everything. I only hope or wish I could be a fly on the wall when he speaks to Bob Murray about that Nissan idea from all those years ago, and talk about sliding doors moments. That was a big one in Sunderland history. But that was brilliant.
And thanks again, everyone, for listening. Look, we'll have all the latest on the Roker Report website, of course, because we've got the fixtures coming out very soon, if they're not already out, depending on when this goes out. I can't actually remember. But we'll have our daily releases on our way to the podcast to keep you up to date with everything, whether it's transfers or, of course, those fixtures, which we're all looking forward to as well. But from us, it's bye for now.